Here's something that might surprise you. When I present a plan to new clients and their data shows that they have enough and that they can spend and use that money, I'm sometimes met with odd stares and uncomfortable body language. It takes a while for them to adjust and understand what I just said, that they can spend their money. Many Canadians who retire with $1 million or more saved will never actually spend it because fear, uncertainty, and decades of savings habits quietly prevent them from ever drawing it down. Today, we'll talk about why this happens, what the research says about it, and more importantly, how to fix it so you can actually use the money you've spent your entire career building. Hi, I'm Stefano Francesca, Certified Financial Planner Professional and Senior Wealth Advisor at Next Step Wealth Management with IPC Securities Corporation. In this video, we're talking about something called the retirement consumption gap. The difference between what your retirement portfolio could comfortably support and what you actually end up spending. And for many retirees, that gap is shockingly wide. And here's what makes this so frustrating. The people most affected by this aren't the ones who didn't save enough. That subset has a completely different set of issues. These are the folks who saved diligently for 40 years. They made sacrifices, and now they're sitting on portfolios they'll never actually use. Here's a scenario I often see. A couple retires with $1.5 million saved. They've worked hard, lived below their means, saved diligently. 10 years into retirement, we review their plan. Not only on track, but they're ahead of the projection. 15 years in, well ahead. They still haven't taken that dream trip to Europe, however. They haven't upgraded or changed the things we planned for. They've been really careful. And their portfolio has quietly grown while they've not taken advantage of experiences they could easily afford. Now you might be thinking, I wouldn't mind having that large portfolio problem. That's a good problem to have. But is it? These are people who delayed gratification for decades. And now that they finally have permission to spend, they can't do it. That's not success. Somewhere along the way, even though the plan showed they couldn't bring themselves to change. And this isn't rare. A study was published in the Journal of Financial Planning entitled Spending in Retirement, Determining the Consumption Gap, where one of the findings was that with a balanced portfolio and a reasonable withdrawal rate, many retirees never touch the principal for their first decade of retirement. And over time, the majority end up with more than what they started with. In some historical market scenarios, retirees were more likely to finish retirement with substantially more than they started with than to fully deplete their savings. That's a significant finding. In these scenarios, substantial portfolio growth was more common than depletion. So why can't smart people spend their own money? Here's what's actually going on. And it's not one reason. It's three forces working against us at the same time. Firstly, there's your identity. You spend 30 or 40 years training yourself to be a saver. You delayed gratification, you said no to things you wanted, and you avoided financial mistakes. That discipline became part of who you are. I hear from clients all the time, we're not big spenders. And now you're being asked to flip a switch and become a spender. It feels wrong. It feels irresponsible. Many retirees tell me they feel guilty taking money out of their portfolios, even when the math clearly shows that they can afford it. Secondly, there's the fear. What if I live longer than expected? What if inflation stays high? What if markets crash early and I never recover? These aren't abstract concerns. They're real. And without a clear, systematic plan, you default to gut instinct. And that instinct is shaped by loss aversion. Seeing that large account balance drop, even by $10,000 or $20,000, triggers anxiety for many. So you pull back. One of my most recent discussions was with a client who was conservatively invested and thought that they should be taking more out. I agreed and showed them the projection. But once they saw the visual of their portfolio value decrease each year, they scaled back. Third, there's how the Canadian retirement system is structured. CPP and OAS often cover basic expenses. RRIF minimums, they start low. So the default behavior is to take the minimum, spend conservatively, let the rest grow, and live off government benefits. You don't feel pressure to spend more because you don't need to. And the portfolio compounds year after year while you live well below what it could support. These three factors, identity, fear, and structure, create a perfect storm. And the result is retirees sitting on millions of dollars they'll never use. Let me show you what the math looks like. Let's say you retire with $1 million. Your portfolio averages a 7% return. Inflation runs at 2%. To deplete that portfolio over 30 years, you'd need to start by withdrawing about $61,000 in year one and adjust for inflation every year after that. But here's what that previous study I referenced actually shows. For the first 10 years, your spending is less than your portfolio growth. You don't actually dip into your principal until around year 17. And in many historical scenarios, retirees finished retirement with substantially more than they started with. So here's the question. If you're going to end retirement with more money than you started, what experiences are you giving up along the way? What trips aren't you taking? What help aren't you giving your kids or your grandkids? What quality of life improvements are you postponing indefinitely? Because that's the real cost, not running out of money, running out of time while your money sits untouched. If you're approaching retirement or you're already retired and you're wondering whether you're being too conservative with your spending, click the link in the description to book a consultation. We'll walk through your income sources, your withdrawal strategy, and show you exactly how much you can spend safely without jeopardizing your long-term security. So how do you close this gap? How do you move from knowing you could spend more to actually doing it? Here's a framework that might work for you. Firstly, start with confidence, not permission. You don't need permission to spend your own money. You need confidence that your plan can handle it. And that confidence comes from stress testing. What if markets crash early in retirement? What if inflation stays elevated for a decade? What if you live to 100? When you put real numbers around those scenarios and see that your plan still works, the fear factor falls away. This is where financial planning and stress testing simulations become invaluable. Secondly, build a system that removes the daily decision. Most retirees turn every withdrawal into an internal debate. Should I take this? Can I afford it? Instead, treat your retirement spending like a business treats its budget. Once a year or periodically, review your portfolio, your income needs, and your goals. Decide how much is available to spend. Write it down, make it part of the plan. Then spend without guilt. This turns spending from constant anxiety into a strategic decision. Thirdly, create spending buckets for peace of mind. One of the biggest barriers to spending is the fear of selling during a downturn. The solution? Set up a cash bucket, 1 to 3 years of withdrawals in cash, GICs, or fixed income assets. No matter what the equity portion of your portfolio does, your next few years are covered. Pair that with an intermediate bucket and a growth bucket, and you've removed the mental hurdle of, I can't spend because the market's down. Fourthly, anchor spending to purpose, not percentages. Retirees who spend comfortably have a clear vision for what that money is for. Travel, family, giving, lifestyle. When you anchor withdrawals to specific goals, not an arbitrary percentage, spending stops feeling like loss and starts feeling like fulfillment. You're not depleting an account. You're funding the life you worked decades to build. Fifthly, use a dynamic approach instead of a rigid rule. The traditional 4% rule is simple but inflexible. A dynamic strategy adjusts based on how your portfolio performs. Strong years, potentially take more. Weak years, dial it back slightly. This keeps your plan intact while allowing you to spend when conditions are favorable. Number 6, coordinate your CPP and your OAS timing. In Canada, delaying CPP and OAS increases your guaranteed income later. For some, it makes sense to use portfolio withdrawals early to fund that delay to boost lifetime income. For others, taking CPP early feels better psychologically. There's no one right answer, but coordinating your benefits with your withdrawal strategy can significantly increase both security and confidence. Number 7, review regularly, but don't obsess. Annual or semi-annual reviews with a planner who understands both the math and the psychology keeps you on track without knee-jerk reactions. And critically, that planner can be the objective voice saying, yes, you can afford that trip. The math proves it. Here's what you need to understand. The challenge for most well-thought-out and prepared retirements isn't having enough money. It's having enough confidence to spend in line with what you've saved. In many cases, the numbers may support spending more comfortably than retirees realize. But without a plan, without stress testing, without someone confirming with you that it's okay, you default to preservation mode because you're dealing with an uncertain future. And that's how you end up 15 years into retirement with more money than you started, having passed up experiences you could have easily afforded. The consumption gap isn't about bad planning. It's about the gap between what the math says and what your emotions allow. And closing that gap requires more than just running numbers. It requires a structure you trust, guardrails that keep you safe, and permission to use what you've built. Many Canadian retirees may ultimately finish retirement with more money than they started. Not because they got lucky, not because markets were exceptional, but because they spent far less than they could have. Every year you wait to address this is another year of experiences you may never get back. Another trip you didn't take, another upgrade you postponed, another way you could help family that doesn't happen. You can't take it with you, but permission isn't enough. You need a plan, you need structure, And you need someone in your corner who can look at the numbers and say, yes, you can make this happen. If you're a Canadian retiree or within 5 to 10 years of retirement, and you want a withdrawal strategy that gives you confidence to actually use your money without fear of running out, click the link in the description to book a consultation. We'll review your specific situation, stress test your plan, and show you exactly how much you can spend, not based on guesswork or fear, but based on data and realistic scenarios. Smart financial decisions can add up over time, and sometimes a short conversation can uncover opportunities that aren't immediately obvious. If you'd like a second set of eyes on your situation, feel free to book a 30-minute consultation. It's simply a chance to explore what may be possible and decide whether working together makes sense. And if you want to dive deeper into retirement planning, make sure to download my free retirement guide. Both links are in the description. Let's take the next step.